We'll start the meeting. We're calling the meeting to order at 7:30. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, presentation of colors, and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Present colors. Please remain standing and join us in a moment of silence as we reflect on those serving in the United States Armed Forces, both past and present, the elected leaders for the state of Pennsylvania, and elected leaders of our nation. We have much to be thankful for in our community. Please be seated. Agenda item number 3.1, notice of organization meeting. The board by roll call vote established a meeting date, place, and purpose of this meeting at the official school board meeting held on December 5th, 2011. Proper notices have been posted on the administration building bulletin board, the front entrance of the administration building, and all educational centers 24 hours prior to the reorganization meeting date. Each school board member has been properly notified in writing at least 5 days in advance as per section 402 of the school code of the meeting date, place, and purpose of the reorganization meeting. Are there any comments of the public? Item number 4. No comments. Item 5.1, nominations for election of a temporary president. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Kleinfelder.
Any other nominations for temporary president? Okay, seeing none, as the nominations, well, I'll close the nominations first. As the nominations are closed and Mr. Kleinfelder is the only candidate nominated, I move for Mr. Kleinfelder's election by acclamation for the position of temporary president. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Kleinfelder?
Thank you, Mrs. Crumrine. Item 6, nomination for president. At this time, I'll take nominations for president of the Ojrsd School Board for a term of 1 year.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Hughes.
Any more nominations?
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Mr. William LaCour.
Any more nominations? At this time, I'll take a motion to close nominations.
Second.
Motion by Mr. LaCour, second by Mrs. Enninger. At this time, we will have a roll call vote by Mrs. Crumrine, and you will vote by nominating or announcing the candidate of your choice.
Mrs. Barkas?
Mr. Hughes.
Mrs. Tallulah? Mrs. Enninger?
Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Freeze? Mr. Hughes?
Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Lakoff?
Mr. Lakoff. There's an echo here.
Mr. Stone?
Mr. Hughes.
Mrs. Wolf?
Mr. LaCour.
The vote is 6-3 in favor of Mr. Hughes.
At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes has been elected school board president for a term of 1 year.
Thank you, Mr. Kleinfelder. Section 7.1, nominations for vice president. At this time, I'll take nominations for vice president.
Mr. President, I nominate Mr. Lecoff.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Stone.
And I would like to nominate Mrs. Farkas.
Do a roll call.
At this time, we'll close nominations and do a roll call vote. Mrs. Crumrine?
Sure, Mrs. Barkus?
Mr. Stone?
Mrs. DeLula?
Mr. Lecoff.
Mrs. Ettinger?
Mr. Stone.
Mr. Freeze?
Mrs. Marcus.
Mr. Hughes?
Mr. Stone?
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Mr. Stone.
Mr. Lecoff?
Mrs. Barkus.
Mr. Stone?
Mr. Stone.
Mrs. Wolf?
Mr. Lecoff.
Okay, there are currently 5 votes for Mr. Stone, 2 votes for Mrs. Barkus, and 2 votes for Mr. Lecoff. So Mr. Stone has it.
Thank you, Ms. Crumrine. So that's Johnson as a term, school board vice president for a term of 1 year. Move on to section 8, comments, or 8.1, comments from the board. Mr. Kleinfelder?
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. I would like to thank my peers for the opportunity to serve as school board president over the past year. I would personally like to thank my fellow colleagues who have volunteered their time and their talents for the betterment of public education in our community. The students in the Ojrsd Roberts School District have performed very well both academically and in the arts. Sometimes it's very easy to focus on the things that are not working well within our school district, and there's always room for continuous improvement. But as a whole, when you step back and look at the collective accomplishments of our students, we have much to celebrate. I believe that the administration and faculty have done an excellent job at providing our students with the skills they require to be successful citizens once they graduate from the Ojrsd Roberts School District. When I started last year, I had some priorities that I outlined. First was to hire a superintendent. Second was to negotiate the REA contract. Third was to implement the feasibility study and the renovations at East Coventry and Vincent Elementary School. Fourth was to work with the administration to ensure that all students or all schools have plans in place to meet AYP. And the last was to develop a fiscally responsible budget that was within the Act 1 index. The accomplishments, we began the design phase for the renovation of East Coventry and East Vincent Elementary School. We did hire a superintendent, Dr. Christian. He started here in August. We're happy to have him. The school district met AYP for 2012 and is on track to meet the goals of having all students provisioned for the year 2014. We approved the 2012-2013 budget, which was within the Act index. No exceptions were used within the budget. We have continued to provide the resources and services to our students without any changes in programming. And we completed the majority of the energy conservation measures initiatives highlighted by the last month's Flip the Switch event at the Ojrsd Roberts Middle School. We may actually have completed all of those, but I know we're pretty well along on the energy conservations. The highlight for me over the last year was participating in the graduation ceremony for the class of 2012, where I shared with the class what I consider to be my keys to personal success, which are the 3 things that I thought were important for them to incorporate into everyday life. First was the ability to adapt to change. Second was to pick a career that you were passionate about. And third was to continually provide service to your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kleinfelder. I also have a couple of quick words. First, I would like to thank Mr. Kleinfelder and Mr. Fries for their leadership over the last year. As you listed, and I can reinforce, we have accomplished a great deal over the last 12 months. Thank you to the board for electing John and I to serve as your leadership team for this coming year. We look forward to serving. I'm extremely proud of the work this board has accomplished over the last 3 years. There have been several bumps in the road, but this board has remained professional and our district is thriving. With a solid administrative team, a dedicated group of professional educators backed up by a great team of support staff, I am honored to be a part of this district and community in what feels like the best school district in our region. 2013 will be a year highlighted by a continued focus on lower state funding, with decreasing tax base, a settlement of our teachers' contract, continued improvement of standardized testing, and the implementation of Keystone exams, as well as the start of a major building campaign, all of which I know our board and district will manage to the high standards, to the high standards we have achieved in recent years. Again, thanks to the board for allowing us to serve this year. We look forward to the challenge. Any other comments from the board?
Just want to thank Mr. Kleinfelder also for his leadership and Mr. Fries, and welcome Mr. Hughes and Mr. Stone for the coming year. It'll be a nice journey.
Mr. Stone thought he could leave the country and not get elected. Okay, move to section 9.1, comments from the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. I'll keep my comments brief. I'd like to thank Mr. Kleinfelter and Mr. Fries for their service as officers this past year and for assisting in my transition to the district. And although January is our formal month where we recognize Board of School Directors for volunteering and serving as elected officials, I'd like to take this time to thank all of you for your dedication to the community and more specifically to the children of Owen-J. Roberts. We've had a great start to the school year, and I'm confident we'll continue into 2013. Thank you.
Thank you. Section 10, public comments, informations, proposals, statements, and/or questions from individuals or delegations pertaining to any item. Speakers will indicate their name and township of residence. Speakers will be limited to not more than 3 minutes. Section 11, adjournment. I'm sorry.
Before, Mrs. Crumman, do you have a letter from Mr. Stone? Did you get a letter?
I'm sorry, Mr. Kleinfelter.
Did you get a letter from Mr. Stone saying that he would accept his position?
Yes.
You want to put that in board communication or
It's going to be here.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Choke. You all right?
I am. I apologize.
Are you fine?
Tickled.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lakoff and seconded by Mrs. Barkis. So we'll call our next meeting to order, the regular school director's business meeting at 7:43. Section 2, executive session announcements. I'd like to announce that we had an executive session prior to this meeting, December 3rd at 6:30 p.m. to discuss legal and real estate matters. Section 3, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. First, we have Kayla Oliver here for our student government report. Kayla?
Thank you. From the high school, the OJR High School Marching Band recently appeared on live television on Channel 6 ABC on the steps of the Chester County Courthouse to kick off the holiday celebration in Westchester. After their television appearance, the band participated in the Westchester Old-Fashioned Christmas Parade and performed in front of approximately 30,000 people in attendance. Students from Mr. DeFusco's Crime and Justice class and Mrs. Derenkam's psychology classes are visiting the Chester County Courthouse in Westchester on Tuesday, December 11th to see the legal system in action. The Anger Club is hosting the reception aspect of the annual holiday concert and tea on Monday, December 10th. School board members are welcome to attend and are asked to RSVP with Kim Nagy or Sheila McIntyre. Musical performance will feature the concert choir, 7-Ups, and the jazz band. Anchor Club is helping to assemble 40 care packages for the women's shelter and the Phoenixville Area Community Center/Shelter on Thursday, along with the Pilot International and Springford Anchor Club. Anchor Club will also be helping with a Christmas party for residents in assisted living this holiday season. The Fall Sports Awards program will be held at 7 o'clock on December 5th. The holiday music concert will take place on December 20th at 7 p.m. The NJROTC is sponsoring a collection for Toys for Tots, along with the support from student government. From the middle school, the 7th grade winter choral concert will be held on December 7th. The 8th grade winter choral concert will be held on December 12th. From East Vincent, the East Vincent Senior Orchestra Winter Concert will be held on December 11th at 7 o'clock. From East Coventry, the East Coventry Winter Concert will be held on December 5th at 7 p.m. The East Coventry Orchestra Concert will be held on December 18th at 7 o'clock. French Creek. The French Creek Winter Concert will be held on December 5th. From North Coventry, the North Coventry will host the Elementary Senior Orchestra Concert on December 13th at 7 o'clock. Dr. Lloyd proudly shared the results of the PSSA at the November 14th PTA meeting. Parent-teacher conferences were on November 19th through 20th. North Coventry reports 96% of their students had a parent or guardian attend conferences. North Coventry art teacher Tom Sonnenberg was named as an Educator 500 by the 3E Institute at Westchester University. From West Vincent, the West Vincent Chorus and Orchestra Concert will be held on December 13th at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Kayla. Very thorough. Just as a reminder, our annual Senior Citizens Tea and Holiday Concert, as Kayla mentioned, is next Monday, December 10th from 12 to 2. Senior citizens, grandparents, and retired faculty and staff of Ojrsd Roberts are cordially invited to attend the annual concert. The event begins in the high school auditorium with a concert featuring the 7-Ups, the concert choir, and the jazz band. Those who are, we'll put this information up on the web as well. Those interested should RSVP and send an email to Mrs. McIntyre, and we'll post that information on our website. We are preparing, believe it or not, for kindergarten registration for the 2013-14 school year. That information will be posted on the district website beginning tomorrow. All of our, as Kayla went through the plethora of concerts that are coming up, they will also all be posted, or are posted on the website now. We'll put a big banner up there with all the dates and times for the public to see. And finally, Kayla also mentioned our conference attendance at North Coventry, but parent conferences really from the K to 8 perspective, we're in that 95 to 97% range prior to Thanksgiving, so they were very well attended. Thank you, Kayla. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. We'll move to 4.1, public comment on agenda items, informations, proposals, and statements from individuals or delegations pertaining to items on the agenda. Speakers will indicate your name, township, or residence, and the items on the agenda which your comments will be addressed. Speakers will be limited to not more than 3 minutes. Move to item 5.1, approval of meeting minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kleinfelder, second by Mr. Freeze. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Stone, we'll assume that was a vote for in favor.
He's got a little bit of a delay there.
Yeah. 6.1, board communications. Mrs. Crumray.
There are no communications, Mr. President.
7.1, board discussion.
I have one item, Mr. President. This Saturday, December 8th, the Ojrsd Roberts Middle School will be hosting a first LEGO League robotics competition. This year's competition is called Senior Solution. They're looking for volunteers, so if anybody has some free time and they're willing to volunteer their time for the middle school, you can contact Dr. Saladino. If not, you can come out. I recommend everybody come out and at least watch some of the matches. We also have, there'll be 24 teams from across southeastern Pennsylvania. Video Ray from Pottstown will be here demonstrating their robot in the pool. And there'll be lots of middle school students from grades 4 to 8 competing in various competitions with their robots that they built. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Kleinfelder. And the only item I have is, the last couple of years, we have asked Mrs. Crumline to send out the committee grid, so I will ask her to do that again this week. If we could turn those back in promptly so we can organize for committees for next calendar year. Any other discussion? Move to Section 8, old business. No old business, Mrs. Crumline?
No old business, Mr. Hughes.
Section 9, 9.1, approval of appointment of certificated position.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kleinfelder, seconded by Mrs. Barkus. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 10.1, approval of, or new business, 10.1, approval of legal counsel as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kleinfelder, seconded by Mrs. Ettinger. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I seem to have a recollection that we were going to have a discussion about moving forward with legal counsel, about putting out an RFP, and I believe that was promised last year at this time, and it didn't happen. I don't think it's the proper way to go. We should have had that meeting, and with no reflection on Fox Rothschild, I'm going to be voting no on all of these appointments for that very reason. I think we have to get a meeting going, have to get this out. One of the costs that we can control, it's one of the things we have to do to review costs. And I think going forward, we should have such a meeting as soon as we can.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yes, I'd just like to piggyback on what Mr. Lecoff said. I remember very distinctly at last year's meeting when I spoke too lengthily about not having any comparisons. I will be voting yes because this is our only option, but I do agree with Mr. Lecoff that we need to, in the very near future, alter how we hire legal counsel.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. 10.2, approval of legal counsel, real estate and assessment appeals.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kleinfelder, seconded by Mrs. Barkus. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I'll have to slow down a little bit for Mr. Stone.
If you want to vote for him, I mean, I didn't hear what he said.
Mr. Stone, that was in favor?
Aye.
Must be a satellite lag.
Yeah, motion passes. 10.3, approval of legal counsel, special education.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Barkus, seconded by Mrs. Ettinger. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. 10.4, approval of dates and times for regular monthly school board meetings and a committee of the whole meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kleinfelter, seconded by Mr. Lecoff. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, several times over the past year, we had discussed the possibility that we should discuss our committee structure. At one point, Mr. Kleinfelter had mentioned that he was going to organize a committee. Mrs. Barkus kindly agreed to serve on that committee. We are now a year later, and we still haven't addressed this. I'm not saying whether it should be the committee of the whole or a committee structure, but as of now, we're kind of randomly going about this business, so I would like to suggest that we either decide, yes, we are going to discuss this, or no, it's just going to stay as status quo. So that's my suggestion.
And we should add that to a committee of the whole meeting or a workshop agenda for in January.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll add it to the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion passes. Section 11, public comment. Information, proposals, and statements and/or questions from individuals or delegations pertaining to any item. Speakers are to indicate their name and township of residence. Speakers will be limited to not more than 3 minutes. Hearing none. Agenda item 12, any board requests for information? Hearing none. Agenda item 13, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Barkus, seconded by Mr. Lakoff. Meeting is adjourned.